Hey, are you just gonna hang out back there? You all comfy? You comfy, kitty? So yeah, there's gonna be a cat back there, just FYI. I don't know if he's gonna move, but he's too comfy. I'm not gonna bother him. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Adorkable Rachel, and it's time once again for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. Hi! Happy New Year! How's your year starting off? You doing good? I'm doing good. So, in case any of you were wondering, yes, I did see Rogue One. Twice, actually. And I know I am really delayed on getting this review out. I was gonna get to it, but life kind of happened. Obviously, the holidays were kind of a big thing. I went home for almost 2 weeks and spent time with my family, and that was like secludedly family time. If I keep doing this YouTube channel, I'm gonna have to use those 2 weeks to just have family time and do things ahead of time. Anyway, since I already did reviews of a bunch of the other movies, I owe it to this channel to at least do my thoughts on this movie as well. So here we go. Here are my official thoughts on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So of course, when this movie was coming out, there was big anticipation for it. Not only because it was a new Star Wars film, duh. Not only did it have to live up to The Force Awakens, which came out just a year prior, but it's also the very first Star Wars film that's not an episode. All the theatrical Star Wars films that have come out so far are all episodes 1 through 7, or the Clone Wars or whatever, but anyway, they are all connected in one way or another to a bunch of the same characters. So this one is actually its own spin-off movie. It's about the rebels who went to go get the plans to defeat the Death Star. Well, you know, to blow it up, destroy it, you know what I mean. Because, as you may have noticed in episode 4, the very first Star Wars movie, they said that they have the plans, but they didn't really talk about how they obtained those plans. So some awesome person out there decided, you know what? Why don't we make a movie about those plans and how the rebels got them? Like, that's gotta be an exciting story, right? And yeah, it is. And honestly, I didn't think this movie was gonna be better than The Force Awakens, and it's not. But I also really didn't expect it to be as good as it turned out to be. So the movie begins and no title scroll. Yeah, which is weird at first because in episodes 1 through 7, they always have a title scroll that gives you a little backstory, but this one, no, nothing like that. All it says is the blue text that says a long time ago in a galaxy far away. That's kind of a given. But then it just throws you right into the action. It just throws you right into what the story is. It doesn't give you any kind of backstory. And honestly, I'm not that surprised. In fact, I kind of like in the back of my mind expected there to not be a scroll because it is a movie that's meant to stand on its own. But even if you've never seen a Star Wars film, I definitely think you can go into this one and just kind of, you know, get it. Basically, the movie is about a young woman named Jiang, played by Felicity Jones, and she's recruited by the rebels to go on a mission with them to find her father, who actually helped build the Death Star. And by the way, the Empire's kind of taken over at this point, but now the Death Star is still like this really brand new thing, and the rebels are just now hearing about it, and that's why they're really desperate to go in and try to find these plans, and they need Felicity Jones, because, you know, her father built it, and it's a, oh my god, we gotta find this before we all get destroyed. She's very understandably reluctant to do this, but upon coming across somebody from her past who convinces her otherwise, she finally decides to go on a mission with the rebels to find her father and destroy the Death Star. But if you did watch the original trilogy, then you know that we do get the plans, but we're definitely not going to get to the point where we actually destroy the Death Star, but still, we're excited to see how this all turns out. The movie does start off with a pretty convincing backstory of Jiang and her parents when she was really little, but then we jump to present day and she's like an adult, or I don't know, maybe she's like in her 20s or something, and it gets a little weird because suddenly we're kind of like jumping all over the place. Like we go from one planet, and then we're another planet, and then we're another planet, and it's like it's established all these locations, and you're just like, whoa, buddy, slow down. Like, what is even happening? And whether you've already seen any of the movies or not, actually, it's a little daunting even as a fan because I don't think any of these locations were in any of the other movies, so they're trying to like establish like all of this like exposition and all of these locations like all at once, and it's just like, whoa. Okay, I need to sit down now. I'm not gonna say it was completely unnecessary because it does at least give you the idea that there is a lot of interaction and life in this galaxy and people go from place to place to place all the time, so it helps establish that, but I'm just putting it out there that they do throw a lot at you at the first, 10 minutes. But once we get past all that, Jin's then brought to the rebel headquarters, and then okay, this scene. So it looks just like the headquarters in episode 4, right? And Mon Mothma's there, and she's talking to Jin, and she looks just like Mon Mothma from episode 6, and it's really awesome that we're seeing all these like little characters that are making all these cameos, and it totally makes sense, and it's so awesome. And I mean, oh my god, there's even Bail Organa, and he's the same guy from the prequels. Even though the prequels sucked, it's still really awesome to see Bail Organa again, and he's like older, and that totally makes sense, and I'm just like, yes! yes, this is what it should have been like 17 years ago. Anyway, we'll talk about that later, but oh my god, I could just not contain how happy I was to have this scene because it reminded me so much of the original trilogy. I'm just like, yes, the filmmakers, they get it. They get what we want. They get at least what I want, and it makes me so happy. You might also notice that upon watching this movie that it does have a bit of an interestingly dark tone to it. That is, of course, to reflect the really harsh times that the galaxy's come down on, especially since this is technically after episode 3. I think they're kind of trying to establish that episode 3 was a little more colorful, this one's a bit more harsh. And a lot of this movie takes place on planets that have harsh, coarse, rough, irritating sand, which is why Darth Vader never goes there. And it's also the choice to make everything look more gritty and aged, and that is the Star Wars way. And again, so glad to finally see that again in another Star Wars movie. It's like so effective when things look like they've been around for a long time, especially in this universe and especially on the harsh times of the Empire. The shots of the cinematography of this movie are of course also very beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen a Star Wars movie where the cinematography wasn't at least, you know, really good looking, and this one's no exception. And yes, of course, it's been like well over 30 years since the original trilogy, and it's bound to look different, but actually it's still, in a lot of ways, from the look and the feel, it still feels like an original Star Wars film. I mean, it's just enough where it feels fresh and new, but also it still feels like it belongs in the same universe. And you gotta love like all the little details too, like all the 70s-ish technology on the Death Star, or the fact that they're still wearing those badges that look like Lego blocks, but you know what? I don't care. It looks like the original Star Wars. It makes me really happy. My absolute personal favorite part of the movie, however, I gotta talk about this for a second, is the reveals. There's this really great shot where we see a Star Destroyer, and oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure that that was actually a model, not CGI, so serious extra points for that. But behind the Star Destroyer, it looks like it's just stars, right? No, actually, when the light kind of comes down on it, it actually turns out it's the Death Star right behind it. Ah, yes! That right there is my favorite shot in the whole movie! Oh my god, it's really hard to describe if you haven't seen it yet, but just that shot alone, I mean, for lack of a better word, it was just so majestical. It just does this great job of showing off for the first time just how massive it is. And you're totally not expecting it, but there it is, and it's like so much bigger than the Star Destroyer, and it's just, oh my god. Oh, and then, soon after, then we get another huge reveal, and it's Tarkin! Tarkin is in this movie! Because when he first shows up, we just see the back of his head, right? And it kind of like lingers there. It just lingers on the back of his head, and you're just like, oh, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're like, I know who that is. Oh my gosh, are they gonna actually show his face? Are they gonna show it? Are they gonna show it? And then he turns around very slowly and maniacally and is like, oh my god, it's Tarkin! I can't believe it's Tarkin! They got Peter Cushing! Oh my god, I had no idea he was still alive! It's Peter Cushing! Except not really. Peter Cushing actually did pass away in 1994, so it came as a really big shock to me that he was in this. I honestly am not sure if it was in the advertising. I don't think it was. I feel like I would have maybe still heard something, but I was still very much about like keeping myself away from the advertising or any spoilers, so I had no kind of context whatsoever that he was in this. But since he has the look, it's obvious that that was actually motion capture. They had an actor play the part, but then they did some CGI to actually give him the look of Tarkin, and that was actually really ballsy of the filmmakers, because a lot of people really don't like that these days. They, especially for like Star Wars movies or like just any big franchise, people don't like you messing with their little, you know, pieces of childhood or the things that they love. And yeah, like big risk to do this, but you know what? It was okay. Again, I had no idea this character was going to be in it, but I knew that Peter Cushing was gone, so I knew that it was motion capture, so I feel like I was kind of looking for the details, and it was a little bit distracting, but at the same time, I feel like if I've never seen a Star Wars movie before and went into this and had no idea that this was a dead actor, I think I might have been fooled into thinking it was a real person. And the reason I think that actually is because the first time around I was super aware and super looking at all this stuff, but then the second time around it actually didn't bother me that much for some reason. It just seemed more real the second time around. And yes, there was some parts where it was a little obvious, but for the most part I got more lost in the idea that this is a character, this is a real human being. It was a really interesting experiment, and I am really glad that they did bring this guy in to kind of be a part of the story, since he did play a big part in episode 4, but My one little nitpicky gripe is that maybe they had this character a little too much. Maybe they could have just used him for like one scene. Like that probably would have been enough, you know, but they kind of like really made him a big part of the story, and I just don't really know if that was that necessary. But still, it was really awesome to see him, and I'm glad that they experimented with that, and yeah, I don't have too many complaints about it. I guess the technology for this is getting better. I mean, who knows? Maybe like in a future Star Wars film we'll actually get like an aged Obi-Wan. I mean, wow. But now moving on to other things, let's talk about the ensemble cast. So for whatever the reason, they decided that this movie was gonna have a lot of characters. We get a lot of different people who kind of come together from different backgrounds, so it's not just like the two leads with a few supporting characters. Like, no, we actually get like a full-on ensemble cast. I didn't really count exactly how many people, but I want to say like maybe 8, 9, something under 10, something like that. Kind of by accident, they just like all come together from different backgrounds and all go on this mission together to get the plans for the Death Star. There's of course Jin, who is surprisingly not that interesting to me. I'm sorry, I mean, she wasn't horrible or anything, but she just didn't seem to stand out that much, and she was kind of sort of a rehash of Rey from Force Awakens, so I was kind of hoping maybe we'd get something a little bit more, but I don't remember too much about her besides her, you know, tragic backstory, and that's about it. Diego Luna, on the other hand, actually I found to be very compelling. I liked his character, I liked how determined he was, I liked that he just had all these different turns in his arcs, and he had like a change of heart at one point, and you could just see it, like, even though he wasn't talking at some points, like, you could just see it in his eyes. I really liked that about him. And then, of course, there's the other characters like Baze Malbus, who's like a rebel warrior, and then there's Badhi Rak, a former Imperial cargo pilot. Please say I got those right, because what is up with these really complicated names? I mean, what does Malbus mean? Is that like a bus for the mall? Whatever happened to just like the simple names like Han and Rey? Just because they're from different backgrounds, it doesn't mean you have to give them like super weird complicated names that I don't know how to pronounce. Donnie Yen as a character I'm not gonna pronounce because I know I'm gonna really butcher it. Okay, he was my favorite character. Oh, I just love him so much. He was funny, and he was blind, but a total badass, and he believed in the Force even though he himself was not a Jedi, and it just totally worked that he like just completely like go with the flow, but in a very Asian, mythical, awesome kind of way. And he was really serious, but he also had a lot of heart and humor to him. Oh, he's just so much fun to watch. Donnie Yen's character was definitely my favorite, but after him, the close second is Alan Tudyk as K2SO. If you watch my reaction video to the trailer of this movie, then you probably know by now that my prediction of this character was 100% right. He was the dignified comic relief character. He said things very seriously, and there were often very serious situations, but just the way that he said them in the situation at hand, a lot of the times the one-liners and that sort of thing, they came out funny, and that is exactly what I wanted from this character. Yes! Yes! C-3PO was a very funny droid, and even though he's very foppish, he somehow works, and I knew that trying to do something like that again was gonna be really hard, so I'm really glad that they got a really deadpan character who just the way he said things came out really funny. It is the Star Wars way, having those little touches of humor. Oh, so happy for it. Also, I mean, you gotta love it when a droid can have like a decently casual conversation with somebody, and then they can still also kill off some stormtroopers at the same time. I mean, oh, that was amazing. Another classic droid, I'm so happy that he exists. It's just really too bad that by the end of the movie, for his character, I was like, oh, no. But interestingly enough, actually, we didn't really get to know a lot about these characters or where they came from or how some of them know each other. They're just kind of like there and on these missions, and we know very little about them, and here we go. And to be honest, at first I kind of thought like that's kind of weird that we don't know their backstories, but actually from what we were presented with and the way that they worked off each other, I found them to be pretty compelling. They were all likable and they were interesting, and if you're a Star Wars fan, then you kind of get the gist from their motivations, why they're on this mission and why they want to fight together. And the fact that they all brought their own unique characteristics to the story, that's kind of overshadowing the fact we don't know much about them, so it worked for me. And honestly, thinking back on it now, I really don't think we want to know too much about all these people, because if we did find out their backstories, it would probably feel rushed, or it would make things like linger on for a while. So I think that what we got was like just the right amount to get invested enough in these characters to the point where we're not like questioning like where they came from or anything. You go along with it. Plus, as the audience member, we're kind of in Jin's position, so all we really need is their willingness to defeat the Empire, and we're good. And of course, what's really obvious about casts like this this, and everyone's been saying this, is that it's really diverse. Like, we've got people from Asian backgrounds, from Hispanic backgrounds, from Middle Eastern backgrounds. It's just so cool to see that kind of thing in a Star Wars movie more and more. Now, the one character in this movie actually that I really felt like I could have had a little more backstory on was Forrest Whitaker's character as Saw Gerrera. Okay, this guy. He apparently knew Jin's parents and raised her and fought in the Clone Wars, and that's why he looks all veteran-y. And that's about it. I guess I just feel like we had this really big gap in the movie where we could have maybe found out more about him, and I don't mind not knowing much about everyone else, but like, why not this guy? There's a lot of tension between Jin and Gerrera, and she's all like, "You abandoned me!" And he's all like, "Well, yes, I had to." Is that all that we get? I'm a little lost here on, like, why he abandoned her. Did I miss that? Also, what was up with that octopus thing that Gerrera had? It just like comes out of nowhere, and Guerrera's like, it can read your mind and sense if you're lying, and they use it on the Bodhi Rook character, and like, it's like the most random, not needed scene. It was there, and then we never saw it again. We never saw what it accomplished, and we never see it again. Why was that there? Okay, and now we're gonna finally talk about that really big thing that I think all the fans were waiting for, and that is Darth Vader. For those of us that actually saw the trailers, we knew and saw that Darth Vader was going to be making an appearance in this movie, but we had no idea from what they gave us if that was going to be a big thing or if it was going to be a small thing. I'm personally satisfied with what they gave us. It's like halfway through the movie and we're starting to wonder, like, when in the world is Darth Vader going to show up, and there! Boom! He shows up. And again, another pretty big reveal with him coming through the smoke and his shadow on the wall, and he just has this like really quick conversation, and he like does this like badass thing with the Force, and then he leaves, and James Earl Jones sounds a little tired, but that's okay, it's understandable, he's getting older. It's a short but effective scene, and then later the movie goes on and we kind of forget about him, but then he shows back up again, and oh my god! I really don't want to give anything away if you haven't seen the movie, but I could just, the second time that he comes around in this movie is just like, it's like, how do you describe it? Probably one of the best, if not the best, scenes with Darth Vader ever. Yes, again, this is kind of what we needed from like the prequels, you know? Like, why couldn't have like episode 3 been about Darth Vader in this state? Like, oh my god, think about how amazing that would have been. We just need like one movie where like this is all Darth Vader does, is from this final scene that he shows up in. If again, you really need to see it to go check it out to just see how surreal and amazing it is, but oh, whew, that was exhausting. Again, just the right amount that we needed, like a small cameo appearance, and then like he just like shows up in the midst of a battle, and oop, I said too much. Anyway, I'm just saying, it totally made up for the fact that we didn't really get much from the white suited guy. What was his name? Anyway, besides the critical nitpicks that I named throughout this review, I really enjoyed this movie. Not nearly as good as The Force Awakens story-wise, but The Force Awakens was kind of like episode 4 over again with other characters, and this movie was actually like its own original story, completely different from any of the Star Wars films, and I could not get enough of it. Like I kind of mentioned before, this is the kind of movie that we should have had in the prequels. This is like what the prequels would have been if they were actually good. It has new characters to get invested with, and it has some of the old characters too, but they're more like cameos rather than like really huge players, but it just all connects together and it makes sense. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the touches that kind of came from the original trilogy, it was kind of pandering and fandom-ish in a way, but I guess to me it wasn't to the point where it was overplayed, because when all that stuff came up, I was always personally really happy. Like, I was never like, oh wow, really? You did that? No, I really liked all of it. I feel like they really did put a lot of time and effort to make sure that everything added up in this universe. Also, remember in my prequels video when I said that there really is no good order to watch any of the movies in, because if you watch it from 4 to 6 and then 1 to 3, there's not a lot of suspense, but also if you do it in in the 1 to 7 order too, where there's also not a lot of suspense. And that's because a lot of stuff is revealed either way, so you can't really have a lot of surprises. But this movie, you can totally watch this one before episode 4. And chronologically, it makes sense. From what I noticed at least, there wasn't anything to be spoiled. There wasn't a moment where I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up, but that doesn't make sense. You could even watch episode 4 and then this one, and it would like seem like things add up really well. Why couldn't the prequels have been like this? If you're gonna be really nitpicky, then of course you're gonna find things that don't really add up, but from a story standpoint and from first and second viewing, I loved it. And okay, yeah, the characters do pull some of the oldest tricks in the book, you know, with like getting past security and that sort of thing, which is a lot like episode 3, so it makes you wonder, like, how come after all these years they haven't upped their security? Come on, Empire! I know we like to have our fun with you, but you guys really gotta get on your A game here. You'd think after falling for it a couple times they would do more thorough security checks, but okay. Anyway, I digress. One more thing I also really need to give this movie credit for is that when there's a battle scene, it really feels like a war is going on. And I don't just mean like people are shooting at each other in space, which they do, but also we get like people storming the beach and fighting each other off like Normandy, or they're like hiding in the village and it looks like the Middle East and then they start battling each other. There's bombs and like tanks, and it just really feels like something we're really used to, and that imagery kind of just makes us go like, oh man, this is a war, man. Do you not want to get caught up in this? I mean, the climax is like, whew. I mean, especially when the battle scenes, the prequels were all really boring, and then the ones in The Force Awakens were pretty good, but not nearly as good as like the original trilogy stuff. Like, this is some of the best battle scenes we get since Return of the Jedi. I mean, the franchise is called Star Wars, so whenever you have a battle, you better make it feel like it's an actual war. And they do in this movie. Anyway, I loved it. I could totally go along with it. I wish they would just call this movie episode 3 and then make the other first 2 episodes. Let's just reboot the prequels while we're at it, and then we'll get the perfect franchise. Only other thing I'm gonna say is that before I saw this movie, I actually did kind of have an idea in my head on what the fate of the characters was gonna be, considering the stakes and what would make this a really legit, good, and compelling movie. And again, not giving anything away, but what happens to them is exactly what I thought would happen to them, and that is a good thing. I'm not gonna say it was predictable, but from a story standpoint, it just made sense, and I'm really glad that they ended it the way that they did. Now, let's go watch episode 4 again. So those are my thoughts on episode 3. I mean, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Now, of course, my question this time around is, have you seen the movie? Did you like it? Did you think everything added up? Was there anything that bothered you? Did you really totally think that it should have been a prequel movie? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And there's also that little bell button so you can get notified about more videos that are coming up. And as always, please be sure to keep checking back for more Adorkable videos coming out real soon. Bye, Adorkable buddies, and may the Force be with you.